So, welcome to another episode of the Immigrant Education Collaborative Podcast. Today, I have two very special guests with me. I have a mother-daughter duo. I have Julie and her daughter Erica. Julie and Erica, thank you all so much for doing this. How y'all doing?
We're good, thank you.
Great. Good, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. So, listen, I'm so excited to have you guys on the show. So, it's the first episode that we're doing with a mother-daughter duo from the immigrant perspective, right? We had a mother-daughter duo when we did the episode on homeschooling, but they both were Native American-born folks. So, this is the first time we have the perspective from the immigrant side. So, I'm going to start with you, Julie. So, tell me, um, leaving Kenya with Erica, already attending school in Kenya, how did you prepare for this transition into the American education system?
So, Erica, I didn't leave Kenya with Erica. I
Okay.
came alone first,
Mm-hmm.
and after 6 months, Erica joined me. So I was in school, and it was really hard for me to focus with her being in Kenya. So I organized for her to be brought to join me. So when she came to America, it
Mm-hmm.
was now figuring out. It was over the holiday, so I had to start looking for a school, and I did find a Catholic school that was next to my home. And it was easier for her to join that because she was in the kindergarten. So she was 4 years old at that time. So she
Mm.
just came in, and when schools opened in the fall, she joined in. She was just in for just that short period of time, and then they felt that she already knew a lot because she had gone to school in Kenya. So come the next school year, come January, she transitioned to go to first grade at 4 years old. So she was a little bit ahead because she had started going to school when she was 2 years old in
Mm.
Kenya. So she used to, yeah.
Wow.
So she could read and write
Yeah.
her three-letter words and all that stuff. Yeah. So they felt she was a little bit ahead.
Yeah. That's awesome. So Erica, that's essentially like they're skipping you a grade when you got started. So tell us, starting school in America, like what are your earliest memories of that time?
I think it's very much like because I was four, it's like very spotty. But
Mm-hmm.
I remember the things like I remember I went to was it two different schools? I don't remember if it was two different. It was either two different, maybe it was two different classes. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I remember being with like one group of kids and like I had my friends there. It was like a bunch of girls. And I remember going to the playground with them. I don't remember any learning experience at all.
Yeah.
Just the playground. I remember playing with blocks. I remember there was one kid that had a wheelchair, and so we would like take him out of the wheelchair so he could play on the ground with us, and we would play with his wheelchair. Just things like that. Not too much from very early on until like we moved states. That's when I really start to remember everything.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Okay. So Julie, as you're getting used to the American education system, like how are you as a parent, like how are you making the adjustments to like help support Erica be successful?
The first thing when Erica came from Kenya,
Mm-hmm.
um, one of the things I well, I wanted her to still speak Swahili.
Mm-hmm.
But when she came in, she was not having it. So she wanted to, I think she felt as if the other kids would make fun of her. So she really jumped right in. She used
Mm-hmm.
to speak English, but she jumped right in and just immersed herself with the other children.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one of the things she came home one day and she told me she wanted this food item. I had no idea what this child was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And she kept saying, it's a salad, it's a salad. And I had no idea what salad she was talking about. So I had to go to school and ask, what is this? This child keeps asking me to make for her. And it was a tuna salad, but she
Uh-huh.
was saying it differently. So I know that she was really trying to fit in and her accent, matching her Kenyan accent with the
Mm-hmm.
American accent. So it did take, you know, a short period of time, but eventually you couldn't even tell that she wasn't born here. So the other thing was when we moved states, just the we moved to I think it was three different states, no, two
Mm-hmm.
different states,
Mm-hmm.
from Michigan to North Carolina. Then eventually we came to Maryland.
Mm.
And when we came to Maryland, she was the only, in Michigan, she was the only Black child in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
In North Carolina, it was mixed. But then when we came to Maryland, she was still the only Black child.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a hard time um, just with the accent,
Yeah.
with the, not accent, how do I, with the, when we say A, B, C, D, in Kenya, we say Erica. Here, she kept hearing like it's Erica. So she'd ask me, Mom, is my name spelled with an I or is it spelled with an E? Like Erica,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Erica.
Mm-hmm.
So it was also a learning experience for me because I had now to start to really pay attention to the accent.
Mm-hmm.
We have an accent, everybody has an accent. Just trying to understand how is that affecting her learning and just being more present, I guess, for me
Yeah.
to understand how she's experiencing it so that I can be able to help her when I get home.
Yeah. Okay. Now I like that. Erica, you were saying something. What were you saying about being?
Um, yeah, it was when I think like, so in North Carolina when we moved, it was more mixed, but that was actually like the first time I'd been in like a majority Black classroom.
Mm,
And we were only there for like a short period of time, but I think that was the first time I'd been with a lot of kids who like at least looked like me.
mm-hmm.
But then we moved here before we moved to where we live now, which is until I guess the last couple of years, it's been predominantly white.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first time since Michigan I'd been in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
But when we first moved here, the first school that we went to was also in a predominantly Black like area.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like, but we were only there for what, like a year or 2 years. I think we were only there for like maybe 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't a majority of my like educational experience, but I do remember some things from there that like I experienced at that school. And then when we moved to this school, I didn't have those problems, but then I had the new problem of again being like the only Black kid in a majority of my classes until I think middle school.
Mm,
It was just me and then maybe one other kid
yeah.
who were not white.
So can you talk about some of those challenges? Because what you described is like there's some regional adjusting that you guys had to do, right? Going from Michigan to North Carolina and then to Maryland. Like you're learning, like those are all almost three different dialects. You know what I mean? You're going from the Midwest to then like the South, kinda, and then back up, close to the
Yeah.
Mason-Dixon line. So what were some of those challenges that you faced during that time that you had to adjust to?
So for Michigan, I don't really remember too much. She would be the one to remember the most of that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember like just trying to speak the way that my friends were speaking.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I was like picking up words that they were saying. But in North Carolina, I think I had picked up whatever the accent is in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember coming to school in North Carolina. I was brand new and I knew my cousins went to the school. So I was like, oh, I'm going to school with my cousins. I was so happy that we were all just together.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like in my class and I had been put at a table with these girls. And so I was trying to talk to them and they were like, why do you talk like that? And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, what do you mean? This is how I speak. Like we're all speaking English. And they were like, but you speak funny. And at that time, like obviously we were like what, 6 or something.
Yeah.
So we didn't know what like AAVE is,
Yeah.
but that's what they were speaking, but I didn't have any experience with that.
Right.
The way that they would talk just naturally, I just didn't know how to talk to them. So I was just talking to them the best way I knew how. And it kind of like it got me singled out a little bit.
Uh-huh.
It's just how I spoke, and I didn't know how to speak any differently at that time. And then we moved from North Carolina to Maryland. It was kind of a similar thing, but then I think because Maryland is so mixed, like there were still girls there who are like that. And I think that's like the first time I dealt with like I don't want to call it racism, but it's like because everybody there was Black.
Mm-hmm.
It was like the othering of like, okay, you're Black, but you're not Black like us because
Mm-hmm.
we're African American, you're African. And
Right.
some kids, most of my classmates didn't really care. They were just like, you're like us.
Yeah.
But there was a particular group of girls
Yeah.
there, like I was like enemy number one
Yeah.
because I was African. That was like the only thing they had anything to talk about. So they would come for like how I talked, what I like to eat, different things like that. And we always used to have this like back and forth banter, all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff, in that school.
Yeah.
But I don't think it really affected like, or maybe I'm wrong. I don't think it affected my actual like learning.
Mm-hmm.
It was just more of the social aspect of like that's the first time that I like knew that socially there was a difference between different types of black.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
before that, I thought that we were all the same,
Yeah.
you know, until I had that experience. And then from there, moving to where we live now and being the only black person, it was having to deal with kids who just had never really like worked with or like been around other black children
Mm-hmm.
and trying to fit into that because I didn't want to stand out the way I'd been singled out at the previous school.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to fit in with them and then having to learn like socially, I'm not the same as these kids, even if they treat me the same.
Right.
Like there's things that they were allowed to do that I couldn't do. I'd get in trouble for.
Mm-hmm.
Little things like that. And then wanting to fit in like the way that I did my hair, the way that I talked, what I wore, what I ate, things like that that could get you singled out in school at that time.
No, that's cool. I really appreciate you sharing that. Now, what I would want to ask you, Erica, is this. At the time that you're going through this, right? At the time that you're going through like having, sort of the um misunderstanding of
Mhm.
blackness by your classmates, how are you taking that? And then also now that you've grown, can you look back and see how those misunderstandings came about?
Yeah. So at that time, because it was like from I was like 7 to 9,
Mm-hmm.
I was very confused, especially at the beginning, because to me, I was just like, you and I are the same. Like, I
Yeah.
don't see how we're different. We look the same. And to me, I used to think everybody who's not Black looks at you and me the same,
Mm-hmm.
which I also didn't know wasn't necessarily true until I
Mm-hmm.
got to like the whiter schools.
Yeah.
But so yeah, when they would come to me with their comments and they would call me different names, I was confused at the beginning because I didn't understand why they would say that if we're all the same. But then like we learned more about slavery and then we like they never talked about like colonialism in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So the more like I went through the school, the more I learned like, okay, they're talking like that because they think that what happened to their ancestors, they think that we perpetuated all of it
Mm-hmm.
and like our lives were completely fine and nothing bad ever happened to us. And we just got to stay in Africa and build our wealth and live comfortably and everything. And we like just sold these people off to suffer.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So once I had that understanding, which was when I was much, much older, then I was like, okay, what these girls were taught at our age, it was elementary school. Like, it doesn't mean that it was okay,
Mm-hmm.
but we didn't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
So there's kind of like you have to have some grace for that. Um, and then the same thing for like when I came to like a white school, not necessarily the students, but I realized some parents would be like, oh, she's African. And there's like a different way that for some reason being African meant something to
Mm-hmm.
them that
Mm-hmm.
was different than being African American.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't understand it at that time, but I guess it was like like I don't want to say it like necessarily a hierarchy, but
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, you're all black, but like African is like better, quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote. Better.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of it like a different word to use for that.
Yeah, it's the
But
otherness.
yeah, it's an otherness because they were like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you're immigrant, like you're not one of them. And
Mm-hmm.
at that time, I didn't understand again how that makes me any different.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just really weird navigating that at a young age.
Yeah, yeah. So Julie, did you realize that she was going through any of this stuff as you were parenting and helping her navigate the education system?
Um, Not a, a little bit. I can give one experience, not two experiences.
Mm-hmm.
When we were at the school in Maryland where there were it was majority black kids.
Mm-hmm.
She came home one day and not even one day, several times, and I think she was being bullied at school
Mm-hmm.
because she would come home. I bought her a sweater, it's disappeared. I
Yeah.
bought this, it disappeared.
Yeah.
So, and when I asked her, she would not tell me
Mm-hmm.
where her stuff is disappearing to. So when I go to school, the teachers would be like, "Oh, maybe the kids are, are just kids being kids and being careless."
Mm-hmm.
But I realized this was more than just things disappearing. So I knew there was something that was going on,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why when we decided to buy a house,
Mm-hmm.
I felt I needed to move from that area to
Mm-hmm.
a different area, and
Mm-hmm.
I found the house where we moved to. And now where it was majority, she ended up being the only black child in the class.
Hmm.
And then there, I think she was also being bullied because one day I came home after school and she had locked herself in her room
Mm.
and she was writing this, you know how you can write, I'm going to be a good girl?
Hmm.
I think she was writing these sentences over and over and over and over. And it's one of her classmates that have made her write like
Hmm.
the, like she was on sheet number 5.
Mm.
So, like, what's going on? So now we had to go to school to find out what's
Hmm.
going on. So she would not tell me stuff like that because she wanted to fit in with her friends,
Hmm.
even if, other stuff was going behind the scenes. She didn't want me to worry about her.
Hmm.
And so I had to step in and say, hey, something is going on. And, let's deal with this so that she can have the confidence to go to school without having to feel that she has to hide that she's getting bullied at
Hmm.
school. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So I guess what we're touching on here is a bit of like cultural competence, right? So when you're
Yes.
and sort of the nuance, with like intraracial and then like
Mm-hmm.
interracial. You know what I mean? Like there are all these
Interracial, yes.
yeah, there are
Mm-hmm.
all these different dynamics that you have to navigate, right? So I would
Mm-hmm.
ask you, Julie, how did you learn like more about the system as like as you're, trying to guide Erica, like what are you doing as a parent to kind of get up to speed since it's the American education system is not a system you yourself experienced as a child? So what are some things that you're doing to say, hey, let me you know, s- do the best that I can because I only get one shot at making sure that Erica gets the best education possible. So what are some of the things that you were doing on your own to kind of get better acquainted with the system?
So I think what helped the most was that I was in the school system as well as an
Okay.
educator.
Mm-hmm.
So learning the children, learning how things work, asking questions within the
Mm-hmm.
school system.
Mm-hmm.
I think that really, really did help me. And
Mm-hmm.
then I was able to come in and help her. And also working with her on a one-on-one
Mm-hmm.
with the educational piece of it. So
Mm-hmm.
I knew everything that she was doing in school. I'd sit
Mm-hmm.
with her in the evening. Let's go over what you're learning. If you have any questions, if you have any, so with that, I was able to help her be successful in that aspect. So the social part was just figuring out who she's hanging out with, who her friends are.
Mm-hmm.
And if I felt this was not the right person for her to be around, I would just not put her in that social setting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I think with that we were, she then eventually as she grew older, she was able to discern. And I think when she went to middle school, that's when now she really started making friends who are
Mm-hmm.
friends still today. That's when
Mm-hmm.
she now started making her own choices. But earlier on, I was navigating most of it for her.
Yeah, yeah. Because it was a huge adjustment period. And thank you for leading me into this. Because Erica, this is the next question I was coming to you with, is around middle school. So by the time you get to middle school, are you kind of settled in the American education system at that point? By the time you're like in like at what point do you feel like, okay, I'm settled. I kind of got a feel for how this thing works.
Yeah, so when I went to middle school, we pulled me from public school, put me in a private school.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was used to the school system at that point. It's like the school that I went to was like not too far from home, not too far from my previous school, not too far from the local middle school. So like even though it was a new environment, my classmates knew some of my friends from elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, like, even if I went to, like, I think I only went to so many parties because she didn't let me just go to people's houses. But the like one or two parties that I did go to, I was like, oh, there's somebody from my old elementary school here.
Mm-hmm.
But like the actual system, I understood it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that because I'd gone from public school to private school, especially that first year, I wasn't used to like the rigor of that school, and
Mm-hmm.
it took like a while for me to adjust to that. And then again, it was like another like all white experience, but then it was like all white people who were, I wouldn't say every single person at that school was affluent,
Mm-hmm.
but like at my elementary school, people came from different backgrounds. But at
Mm-hmm.
this school, unless you were somebody who was like on scholarship or something like that, it's not that it was the most expensive private school, but it wasn't the cheapest either.
Mm-hmm.
So I had like a lot of I don't know what the word would be for like cross like financial
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
barriers.
So yeah, so like so
Um,
like what would you call that? You would call it like
Economic.
economic stratification, kind of like
yeah,
people all over the place economically.
yeah,
Yeah.
because for me it was like alhamdulillah, like we weren't like struggling, right?
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
like I would go to school and I'd be like, oh, this girl has like $150 boots. I I go to the school, why can't I have $150 boots? Why
Yeah,
can't I
yeah,
have the same things that they have? You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And then just like things like that for the school, like they would have different programs or stuff like that. Or when I did cheerleading at the school, there were things that they wanted us to do, and I'd come to mom and be like, "Oh, it costs this much," and it was a no. And at that time, again, I was like, "If we can afford for me to go here, why can't we afford for me to do the same thing?"
Okay. So yeah, so you're in this, so this is middle school you're talking about.
Yeah,
Okay. So you're in a pretty much an affluent middle school or in a middle school with a lot of kids who are affluent. And then
yeah.
so that's an adjustment also, is what you're saying. All right,
Hmm.
because then you're like, okay, we're here. These folks have like all these material comforts, where are my material comforts in a sense? Because you're still a
Yeah.
child, evolving. And I'm assuming that for your mom, it's more so around safety and like the quality of the education is why she has you
Hmm.
in that school. But as a child, you're not thinking about that. You're just like, where are my boots? Yeah,
Pretty much.
yeah.
My
Okay.
friends, I'd be like go to my friend's house and I'd be like, wow, like their homes are so big. I remember like one of my really close friends, we're still actually like really good friends to today. I'd gone to her house and her house is gorgeous, mashallah.
Yeah,
And I remember being like, okay, now I have to bring her to my house. And I remember being like, it's not like our house is bad, but our house
yeah,
is small in her
yeah,
house. And she's gonna tell everybody
yeah,
that I live in a small house. She lives in this mansion.
yeah,
Another friend who like she lived on a farm, she had horses, and I was like, they all have like so much stuff.
yeah.
It was just things like that. And then, but I think I got lucky with like the friends that I made at that point that they didn't really, obviously, they didn't make it like a big deal or they didn't care.
Okay. So does this middle school also have a high school or this is just, it just stops at eighth grade?
This one stopped at eighth grade, but we
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of like, I don't know, call them like sister schools, like feeder schools.
Mm-hmm.
So I did go to private school for freshman year of high school as
Mm-hmm.
well, two
Mm-hmm.
of those feeder schools, and my friends actually went with me.
Mm-hmm.
So it was nice to like at least be able to keep those connections like that first year going into high school.
Gotcha. So how did you make that decision in terms of which of the feeder schools to go into?
You had to take an exam.
Okay.
So they made the decision. And mom, honestly, mom kind of did that,
Yeah.
but they made the decision based off of the exam. So we looked at a couple different schools, again, which were private schools. We'd actually looked at boarding school as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'd looked at like me going back to school in Kenya for a while, which I was conflicted about. Like I really liked the thought of being able to go back home because I hadn't been in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But then it was like leaving everything that I knew because now I was like American. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know Swahili. I didn't know that much about the culture outside of like, oh, we eat like chapati and yama and everything at home.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of stuff. So I was excited about the prospect of like going to school back home,
Yeah.
but then I was also like nervous about just leaving everything that I knew.
So Julie, what was that like for you? Like as Erica's getting ready to leave middle school and you're considering all these different options for high school, you're looking at boarding schools, sending her back to Kenya, then you have, a bunch of different feeder schools, public schools. Like what went into you making that decision for her?
My initial thought was I wanted her to go to Kenya
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, if she goes to Kenya, she will come back, she will know how to, she'll be away from me and she can take care of herself.
Mm-hmm.
So she can be more independent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing was the cost of education.
Mm-hmm.
So we looked at different schools. We tried to get scholarships,
Mm-hmm.
but most of the schools that we're looking at were pretty expensive. They had
Mm-hmm.
accepted her, but the cost was a little bit prohibitive for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I ended up choosing the school that was closest to us.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Catholic school. It was closest to us. It
Mm-hmm.
was affordable. It was almost like going to college.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought, well, if I pay for the education now, I might not have to pay for college.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's where now Kenya ended up taking a backbencher because I thought let her go to high school here for the first and second year, then she can go to Kenya third and fourth year
Mm-hmm.
of high school. But that never ended up happening.
Mm-hmm.
But she did go to she. I was able to afford the first 3 years of private school. Then we decided to change it to public school
Okay.
because of the program that she was looking at getting into.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay, so this is a really good decision. So, Erica, talk about like that process, right? So you're going into um one of the sister schools or the feeder schools for high school. And then so when do you start thinking about what do you want to do after high school? Which is, which leads to what your mom just ended with about, the program that you ended up, transferring for. Like when do you start going through this whole process of, what career I want to pursue after I finish high school?
So I think we started that process within like freshman year,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. They used
Mm-hmm.
to have like these events at the end of the year. They would have like career, like just intro to different careers and stuff
Mm-hmm.
at that school. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was like introduced to like, oh, you could go into this, you could go into medicine, you could go into journalism, you could go into like, I don't know, science, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just like poking our brains at it, but we were like 14. So
Yeah.
they would give us the information. I was like, oh, cool. Like I'll come back to that in 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's really not that big of a deal. But I think that's where mom like leveraged her being like a high school teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we would start to have like very broad conversations about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then going into sophomore year, so I transferred from that school to our local public school
Mm-hmm.
because I decided like, oh, I think I want to go into medicine, which um foreshadowing, I did not go into medicine. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
at that time I thought that's what I wanted to do.
Gotcha.
Uh, I thought I wanted to either do that or go into nursing or something. And that school, while it was really good and they had a lot of like amazing programs and everything, my local public school had a like a pre-med program for
Mm-hmm.
kids who
Mm-hmm.
wanted to go into nursing or into anything within that field.
Mm-hmm.
There was a class for that.
Mm-hmm.
And you could do it the whole 3 to 4 years. Um, yeah, I think it actually started your sophomore year. And if you were accepted into that program, you would do it the entire 3 years. And then you could pick that track for when you started university.
Mm-hmm.
So I like got in there and I loved the class and I made friends in that class and like we wrote out the remaining 3 years at that school in that program. I learned a lot of like really cool information and stuff. We got to have like labs and stuff that weren't really offered to kids who weren't in that program.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we had sometimes people would come in and like give us like presentations or talk about things that you wouldn't really have access to outside of that program. So if that is like something you were interested in, like you wouldn't have known
Mm-hmm.
pretty
Mm-hmm.
much. So I think I got really lucky that that was something that was offered at my like local public school.
Okay. Now, so
Mhm.
so talk about how you actually um like considered or prioritize a career in medicine. Like where did that come from? Were you like playing with, stethoscopes as a child? Like did you watch, TV shows with doctors? Like where did that come from?
I think it came from a lot of different things. Like I was always interested in a lot of just like the human body. I remember when I was in elementary school, my mom had this book. I don't know where she got it from.
Mm-hmm.
It was this book about like pregnancy, right? And so it would go through every single thing about it, and I would sit there and I would read that book. I was like 8. I had no business reading that book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It would go through everything, the anatomy of the baby, the mom, like how everything changes. And I used to find it like to be the most fascinating thing. And I'd be like, I can't believe like your body can do this. I didn't know blood can react like this. I didn't know like that's how everything works. And then I would like go online and I would like research, I would like watch videos. I was a weird kid. I
Mm-hmm.
just find it so interesting to like sometimes like people would post like surgeries and stuff online and I'd watch it and I'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's so cool. Like, okay, that's how people do a gastric bypass. Again, I'm like 10.
Yeah, yeah.
I just found it the internet was like an amazing place for me at that time because if I went to my mom and asked her, she wouldn't know what it is or why I'm looking that up.
Yeah.
And then I also think like one of the things that piqued my interest was like when we moved to Maryland, I had a friend at my first school
Mm-hmm.
who had leukemia. And so again, like I, even if I could ask my mom, mom didn't have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the internet and I learned about what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that also is something else that piqued my interest because I had somebody who was like in my life who had something.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know more about it, more what it was. And
Yeah.
like she was fine, alhamdulillah. Like
Yeah.
she survived, she was cured and everything. I actually ended up seeing her again in high school at like a track meet. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's I think that's where it really started, was just like basic curiosity as a kid and
Mm.
my childhood. It just carried on. Like
Yeah.
I just loved learning about the human body. So by the time I got to high school, I was like, this is something that I think I could actually really
Yeah.
enjoy.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. And I think you touched on it, right? You said the word that I was going to use was curiosity, which I think is it's a superpower, right? Like
Mm.
if you're curious, that's how you kind of learn and your knowledge, becomes abundant, because you're actually curious. And I think it sounds simple and it sounds pretty straightforward, but it's something that we see, a lot of people don't have that. You know what I mean? A lot of people are just like, yeah, I could look it up whenever, and they're not curious. So where did that bug and that like love for learning come from for you? When you talk about being curious, like were you always just inquisitive, or you always, just trying to figure out, because it seems like that's the thing that's going to propel you into greatness, and you already have it. So were you just born that way?
I don't know when it started. Maybe she may know when it started. I just know like it wasn't just medicine. Like I just like even at a young age, I liked watching documentaries. I would
Mm-hmm.
like wake up early at 5 a.m. to watch Animal Planet because the Big Cat Diaries was on and I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to learn big cats.
Yeah.
Things like that. Like if it's something that I was interested in, I would
Yeah.
just dive head first into it and I wanted
Yeah.
to know everything about it.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. So Julie, can you speak to that a little bit? Because I think Erika just cracked the code, right? Like curiosity and a love for learning. I think those two things, and then coupled with the thing that you're interested in, I think that's the formula for success. So as a mom, can you talk a little bit about how you help to, nurture and cultivate that in her? Like, she probably took the lead and you would see that she liked something, but what are some things that you did to help, like compound her knowledge? You know what I mean? Like, how did you expand on what she was doing?
I think being an only child, my goal was to ensure that she never told me that she's bored.
Mm-hmm.
So from an early age, I started reading to her and
Mm-hmm.
having her read and having her read different types of genres
Mm-hmm.
and listen also to music, different types of music.
Mm-hmm.
So um, from that, it was for her now to explore for herself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I've introduced it to you, you take it, run with it. So even with watching TV, I just never let her watch cartoons all day.
Mm-hmm.
I'd put shows that were, learning shows
Mm-hmm.
and show when I see that she's enjoying a particular kind of show, I would I would keep putting that show on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how but it wasn't even like really intentional, but
Mm-hmm.
it was, I don't want this girl to get bored. And at the same time, I want her to learn.
Yeah.
When she was, for example, when she was in the third, in the second grade, before we moved to where we live now, she could spell like the 10 letter word, like elephant, caterpillar.
Mm-hmm.
So she would come to me and she'd be like, Mom, can you spell the word caterpillar? And she would spell it to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd encourage her we used to call it the big word challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd encourage her to do that. So she would go out of her way to find things that she thinks would come and she would challenge me as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
So we just kept the game going.
Yeah.
But it was really just for me to ensure that since she's an only child, she doesn't come and tell me, hey, I'm bored, I don't have anything to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that served her well. It serves
Yeah.
her well till today.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Erica, I think you've cracked the code, right? So you have this love for learning, you're curious, and then you really, you can delve in and go to, some depths based on the things you're interested in. I want you to take us to high school, right? So now you're in high school, you're in 11th grade, going into 12th grade. I'm assuming you're still thinking pre-med, possibly. So like, how are you preparing for the SATs? What are you thinking about, going to college? Like, walk us through, this high level, experience that you're having at this point as a junior going into your senior year of high school?
Yeah, so junior year, I think like that's when I had been pretty much on the track to like, okay, yeah, I want to do that or I want to do nursing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and we had actually gone on like a couple of college tours,
Mm-hmm.
but then funnily enough, I'd actually gotten like my own laptop and so I downloaded the game Sims
Mm-hmm.
and like yes, for like something.
Yeah.
And it's all I wanted to do. I'd finish my homework and I'm on my game. I have
Yeah.
my music on. Nobody come into my room. I'm playing
Yeah.
my game.
Yeah.
And that's when I like discovered kind of like architecture or interior design.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was looking at that a lot as well because I enjoyed doing it in the game. I didn't actually play the actual game that much. I would
Mm-hmm.
just go in there and just build houses. I'd build like a business. I'd build a park. I'd build like a pool, just
Mm-hmm.
like creating different things. And
Yeah.
that's where I found a lot of joy. I also like played Minecraft at that time, so I would spend a lot of it building stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I played the game itself very rarely.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but just like trying to build different structures. I'd even like go up online and look out floor plans and I'd try to like build them in the game and see
Mm-hmm.
like how realistic it would be for, like for a
Yeah.
person to actually
Yeah.
live in this house. And I really started getting into interior design and it's like even though that's not necessarily where I went, I still find it really interesting. Like
Yeah.
I just love looking at that. And so small things like that just piqued my interest in that direction. So when it got to junior year, we were looking at schools that had really good nursing programs.
Mm-hmm.
But we looked at a school that had a really good interior design program. And then I think it was was it the summer before junior year? I went to Kenya. That was the
Mm-hmm.
second time I went back, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an internship with one of my mom's friends. He works at an architecture firm.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like showed them this website that I'd found where you can like create like a home and it'll give you like a 3D rendition
Mm-hmm.
of like your home once you've finished building it. And I helped them work with a client and they actually ended up using my design. And I was like, well, it's so cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been looking at that a lot. So we did college tours. We started doing research on that. I went to the career or college fairs that they had at school. And then again, I think mom like leveraging her knowledge of how the system worked was like a really big help
Mm-hmm.
because we were able to know like these are the scholarships and stuff that you could be eligible for.
Mm-hmm.
This is when you need to start applying. This is when you need to like start studying for SATs,
Mm-hmm.
ACTs,
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff. So I think by the end of junior year, we decided to do ACT.
Mm-hmm.
So I think by the like I'd gone into the study groups and everything. Mom had made sure I was there. I would spend like a couple of hours after school doing that for like weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks on end.
Mm-hmm.
We got the books and everything. So I'd taken my ACT the end of junior year. So
Mm-hmm.
by senior year, I already had the schools I wanted to apply to. I had my results. Everything was set to go. So we did a couple of schools for early decision,
Mm-hmm.
and then a couple of them were like regular decision. So by March, I don't know if it was March or April, I already knew which college I was going to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so what major did you decide on at that point?
I decided on nursing.
On nursing. Okay, gotcha, gotcha. So did you complete the nursing program?
Not at all.
No? What happened?
So everything was fine until we got to anatomy class.
Yeah,
So this is
yeah.
actually sophomore year of college. We did anatomy, and I think it was like I had a lot going on, but then the actual material, I was struggling with it. And then I feel like the way that the school was mapped out, they kind of make it like they don't want you to succeed, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they want you to go through this part of it by yourself. And so it's not like I wasn't asking for help. I would go and I'd ask for help and I'd go to the office hours and everything. I just wasn't getting it.
Mm-hmm.
And I at that point, I like to me, I was just like, if it's really this difficult, I'd rather just take my energy and everything and put it to somewhere where, okay, I could still end up being somewhere where I can help people. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't necessarily have to be nursing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, like I don't necessarily want to shame the school, but like
Yeah. No, no,
some of
no.
my
Yeah.
other like friends who were in the same program, they were like, those people just are trying to just weed you out. So
Right,
if they
right.
have weakness, they get you. And
Yeah.
after that anatomy class, I decided to just drop out of that class. But if you drop out of the class, you drop out of the major. So I just
Mm-hmm.
switched majors.
Okay. So what did you end up switching to?
I actually did social work.
Okay.
So social work,
Okay.
and then I transferred to a different university. So I did a bachelor's in like human services, social work, and
Hmm.
then I did a minor in Arabic.
Okay. Nice, nice, nice. So let me ask you this, and we'll stay on this for a minute. So you chose nursing, and then anatomy is really what like threw you off a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Um, so but then you have this love almost for like architecture, urban planning in a sense. It's all these like you have this other, like these other disciplines that really intrigue you. So what did you
Hmm.
end what did you end up doing with the architecture and like the design and what did you what because that's still part of you. Where did that go? What happened to that?
I think I just never looked at going into it because I'd always had like in my mind like, oh, nursing, nursing, nursing,
Hmm.
or something in like the services field.
Yeah.
And so I just never looked at going back into it. But it's like even till now, like it's still something that I enjoy doing.
Yeah, yeah. So this was for you, like playing The Sims essentially was like your release or your
Yeah.
escape after like working hard. You had the schedule where you're going to school, getting your schoolwork done, you're studying for the ACT, you're doing track, you're doing all these other things. So this was kind of like your wind down time in a sense. But you saw when you went to Kenya that really I was building up the skill set that really translates pretty well to architecture.
Hmm.
Yeah. So is it just did you just put it on the shelf somewhere and we'll see
I
what
think
happens
it's
in the
still on the
future?
shelf. Yeah, because I think honestly, if somebody were to be like, "Oh, you can like come and work here," I would take it
Yeah.
because I know it's something that I really enjoy.
That you enjoy doing. Yeah. And it's also a way to help and serve people. All
Hmm.
right. So mom, coming back to you, right? So what suggestions do you have for immigrant parents? You yourself didn't go through the system, right? You had your daughter go through the system. So, or what advice would you give to your younger self? You know what I mean? Like if you had to start this process over, like one of the things that worked really well, what are the things that you wish you'd done sooner? And maybe you might say I wouldn't change anything, but what advice would you give to your younger self and maybe to some other immigrant parents who are about to embark on the same journey that you and Erica went through?
The main thing that I would change
Mm-hmm.
would be to advocate for my child more.
Mm-hmm.
So its parents need to know what programs the children are being placed in
Mm-hmm.
and get get a good understanding of the program.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's not what they think is right for their child, then they need to advocate for them
Mm-hmm.
because the system here and the system back home is totally different.
Mm-hmm.
So just getting that understanding of, hey, my child has been put in a program. What is this program all about?
Mm-hmm.
So it might be the right program for them, might be what they need, or it might be the wrong program. And I'll give an example.
Mm-hmm.
I had a student come in from Kenya one time,
Mm-hmm.
and she was thrown in not what is this program called? It was a math program. It was a
Mm-hmm.
high level math program.
Mm-hmm.
She was in my class. She was in my basic class.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew, or calculus. So she was put in a calculus class. And just listening to her and looking at her level of work, I knew there was no way she was going to be successful in the calculus class.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and I spoke to the parents
Mm-hmm.
and I told him, if he was an elderly parent, and I told him, you know what, you need to come to school and have a conversation with the counselor
Mm-hmm.
and let them know that this is not the right program for your daughter. She will not be successful in that program. So just understanding what the children are getting themselves into, what programs they're being put
Mm-hmm.
into, would be very helpful. The other thing would be when it comes to college, navigating college
Mm-hmm.
is not easy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Scholarships don't just come because
Mm-hmm.
your children are bright.
Mm-hmm.
If I had known better,
Mm-hmm.
I'd have made sure that the first school that she went to, the first college that she went to, was though she wanted to get into nursing, I'd have looked at a school where probably would have gotten should have paid the state fees.
Mm-hmm.
So she went into a school that ended up putting us in debt, even though she got scholarships,
Mm-hmm.
we still had to take a loan.
Mm-hmm.
So just understanding the system and knowing, okay, my child could be bright. A lot of immigrant kids are, and immigrant parents are well educated. So understanding that, hey, if your kid goes to this school, this is how much debt you might end up with.
Mm-hmm.
So is that what the child needs? Maybe they need to go to a community college,
Mm-hmm.
and then from there they can navigate on to another school. So just understanding how the system works and how college works,
Mm-hmm.
I'd have done it differently. Yeah.
Yeah, no, no, I love that. And so when you say that parents should know about the programs, they should understand how the system works, I think those are very valid points. What would
Mhm.
you suggest they do? Like how would they go about, understanding it better, especially the nuance that you talk about, right? In terms of going to, let's say a private university where they give you a scholarship, but you still have to take some money out versus going the community college route and maybe going to a state, a public university instead of a private university. Like how would you suggest parents go about learning, a lot of this nuance? What should they do?
I think parents should look into the particular school
Mm-hmm.
and then look at options. What are
Mm-hmm.
the options that are available and how do they align with what their children want to do? Because
Mm-hmm.
I did look at the big picture, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go deeper into the school because she could have gone to the school that she ended up going into.
Mm-hmm.
She could have gone to that particular school with the ACT score that she had. It was still a very good school, and I believe should have been successful in the program that she was in.
Mm-hmm.
But because this was a more elite school,
Mm-hmm.
I ended up putting her in the elite school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if I had done my homework better, if I had really researched and found, okay, they have the same program,
Mm-hmm.
which is cheaper, which, might not get me into debt,
Mm-hmm.
then would have been at a better place. So just doing their homework and asking questions, going online, the information is online, seeing what people are saying about the school. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that would be what I'd be able to. And if there are other people who've gone to that particular school, just talking to them to find out what the experience is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. I think that's very helpful. So Erica, what has this experience taught you about yourself in terms of, if you look back to, starting in your sophomore year of high school, when you're getting ready to transition to your neighborhood or the public high school, and then you're sort of exploring, what you think your career would be. And, you're looking at pre-med, you're thinking about, med school or becoming a nurse. Like, what did you learn from this experience in terms of, the path that you went on that you feel like, this has been a really good lesson that I learned that's going to help me in the future?
So I think like even though I really love that program and everything, I
Mm-hmm.
think I would have had a lot more success if I'd gone for what I actually enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
And a part of it, which like we didn't really touch on, is like I wanted to do that because like African parents,
Yeah.
you're in medicine, everyone's gonna be like, wow, like
Yeah.
she's this, she's that. Not even
Yeah.
just my mom, like
Yeah.
just people would in our family just be like, oh wow, she got into medicine, you
All
know?
right. Dr.
I think
Erica.
like if yeah.
Yeah.
I think if I'd gone for like
Grandpa.
actually
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed, I think I would probably be doing what I love
Yeah.
instead of just
Yeah.
working,
Yeah.
which is fine. But yeah, I think I would probably that's like the one thing that I would say I learned through that,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the only thing I think I would change.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, like it was still a good experience, and I still think I learned some interesting stuff, some cool stuff
Yeah.
about myself. I learned a lot about how the system works here, especially in America, at least this part of America, because I know every part is different.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just learning about the system here. So at least in the future, later on, if I decide to have kids in this country,
Mm-hmm.
I know how to navigate it. Hopefully, it
Yeah.
doesn't change too much. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I appreciate you being so open about, sort of in a sense, you're kind of, it's tough, right? Because when you're the child of immigrants, it's like, okay, we're in America. And so we have to take advantage of this opportunity in a sense, right? So let me try to go for, something that can sort of, make everybody proud. So in a sense, you're kind of sacrificing a lot of who you are for the greater good of the family in a sense, right? It's a quiet sacrifice. And a lot of people go through that. So I appreciate you sharing that. But what you said that you learned and what you said you would then, pass on to your children in the future, how would you apply that lesson to yourself going forward, right? Because in a sense, you said you would have kind of honed in on the thing that you loved, the thing that you were, you felt, you had some meaning and some connection to, and maybe
Mhm.
gone with that. So talk to us about that.
So I think it would depend on like different parts of how I would apply it in the future, inshallah. But like
Hmm.
when I think about just like the school system in general, especially like as a kid now, like I'm on TikTok and everything, and
Hmm.
see how like people are talking or teachers are talking about this generation, all that kind of stuff. I think like I won't talk about what other parents should do, right? But I
Hmm.
think what I would do is like the same way that my mom like nurtured like my interests and everything as a kid, I would do that with my kids and like
Hmm.
make sure that they, at least from a young age, like you can discern like, okay, this is something I actually like and I'm interested in. This is something I'm not. So by the time we're getting to like high school, like it's easy for you to make that determination for yourself and you don't feel like you have to like give something up just to like make me proud or their father proud or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, and to be able to like ask for what they need at school and stuff, because I don't think I really did that until college.
Hmm.
Um, I just kind of like went with the flow.
Yeah.
So things like that, I think I would want to implement in the future, inshallah.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, just like I guess building more like self-confidence in
Hmm.
my kids, because that's something that if you're not really looking out for it, it's easy to lose that.
Hmm.
And it's something which like my mom is busy, so it's not like
Yeah.
I'm faulting her for that, but
Yeah.
it's if you're not like actively looking out for that in your kid, you won't notice that
Yeah.
that's going on. So yeah, I think I would just try to instill that from them in an early age.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think those are some excellent points, right? And that not just excellent, but they're easily overlooked, especially the
Mhm.
building confidence part, right? So and then building confidence comes from just doing things over and over and getting success and just iterating and getting better and learning. So I love that. So here's the last part of this conversation. I want you guys to either tell me a question that you wish that I asked that I didn't ask, or tell me a question that you wish that I asked the other person that I didn't ask.
I'm just thinking about how she did transition into learning Arabic and
Mm-hmm.
picking up the language.
Mm.
Maybe if you had delved a little bit deeper into that
Yeah,
and
yeah,
how, how she can use that in the future,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
No, no, I love that. I
So
think that's a great question. So yeah, Erica. So marhaban. Um, tell us about learning Arabic. So are you trilingual? Are you English, Swahili, and Arabic? Like what or it's more than three languages? How many languages are we working with here?
So we're trying to be trilingual.
Okay.
I'm still doing like Arabic classes and everything, and I've
Mm-hmm.
actually started learning Swahili independently now.
Nice, nice.
But I
Yeah,
kicked back. Like now I'm starting to get a bit more comfortable. So mom and I'll have like a couple of words that I'll say to her and she can respond. Things like that. So we're getting more comfortable and like I'm gonna be traveling to Kenya this summer, inshallah. So I'm planning, I'm coming back. I'm gonna be fluent. I'm gonna be able
yes.
to speak Swahili. Because that like at the very least, that's something nice to add to my resume. But I think like now that I'm older, it's important to like really grab hold of that because like I was saying before, like these are things that I want to instill like in future generations. So you can't teach your culture if you don't know your
Yeah,
culture. And a
yeah.
big part of culture is language. So I'm working on Swahili, but Arabic, it's like I like converted to Islam. So a big part of it was just wanting to be able to like understand the Quran like in the language that it was
Mm-hmm.
revealed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was like, well, two birds with one stone. How many people would look for a different language, especially a UN language, on a resume? So
Mm-hmm.
it's good to have there. And then I'm gonna have better understanding of my religion. It opens up the doors for me to like attend courses and stuff that are
Mm-hmm.
only taught in Arabic, which I wouldn't be eligible for if I didn't speak the language.
Yeah.
So being able to have access to that now while I'm not fluent in Arabic, um, I can see how it can like as I progress in my language skills, I can see it opening a lot more doors for me in that sense. And I just love the language. I just love hearing it, listening to it, speaking to people in Arabic. It's a very beautiful language.
Shukran, shukran. So thank you for sharing that. And I think it's like language is so important, right? Because then you can, communicate with a lot of different people. You can travel to a lot of different places over the world. So thank you, Julie, for making me highlight that. I think that's really important. And I hope you become fluent in Swahili also this summer. So that'll be good. So what about you, Eric? Is there a question that you wish I'd asked you or your mom?
I think I wish you'd asked the importance, like the important roles that teachers played in like throughout school
Okay.
ages. Because I feel like I've had a lot of different teachers that had either really positive impacts or negative impacts, and part of that
Mm,
shaped the way that I viewed school
yeah.
at different times. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. That's a great question, right? And that's something I think that's what, your mom alluded to that earlier, is for parents to get involved. And I think, that's part of it, right? It's like knowing the teachers, but also letting the teachers know you and know your child. I think that's important also, right? So it's important for parents to go into the schools to get to know the teachers get to know them, but the parents have a lot of insight that they can share with the teachers that can actually help the teacher, connect with the child, in a lot of different ways. So I think, that relationship is definitely crucial.
Like especially again, like with what I've heard from online, because I don't have kids.
Yeah.
So, but like I think it's important to like not only make sure that like your kid has a good relationship with their educators, but that you do as well. Because I
Mm-hmm.
think again, I'm not saying everybody, but
Mm-hmm.
some people kind of treat school as like a daycare for their kid.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like these are the people that your kid is with like a majority of the day.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you want to
Yep.
know who your kid is with, and you want to know what kind of environment that your kid is in for what is it, like 8 hours of the day? They're only with
Absolutely.
you so long and they're asleep for most of that time.
Yeah.
I think like just knowing who it is that your children is around, who they're exposed to, what they're learning from these people, it can also help you understand like things that you don't really understand about your kid. Maybe if you talk to these people, you can see what's going on in their day that you wouldn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it helps
Yeah.
you your kid better as well.
Yeah. And I think that's really crucial. That's really important. And also, shout out to your mom for, all the work and service that she's done, in that environment. And like you said, sometimes, that you don't want any damage to get done to your child, but it can happen, right? Because a lot, we talked about, before we started recording, like one of the biggest challenges is, folks who have jobs that they don't enjoy. And
Yeah.
that happens everywhere, right? It happens in the school system, it happens in the legal system, it happens, with pilots, with, everybody. You know what I mean? So the last thing you want is for your child to be in the care of someone who
Yeah.
doesn't
Who
like
doesn't want to be
exactly. Yeah. So this
there?
is this is truly important. So thank you so much, Julie, and thank you so much, Erica. I really appreciate you all sharing your story with us. This is really enlightening. And thanks for sharing your journey and your experiences with us. And I think this will be greatly beneficial to everyone. So thank you. This has been another episode of the Immigrant Education Collaborative Podcast. See you next time. Thank you, ladies.
Thank
Bye.
you.